ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's the Midday Market Report with the one and only Mr. Ron Marmalefsky, live from LA. A couple days earlier than usual. It's feast week, Thanksgiving week. So we're scrambling like eggs here, and the show must go on. So we're blessed and honored to have Ron here. As we're going to do a quick recap of the carnage in the SEC, what happened over the weekend, of course. Tennessee getting the big prize with the Alabama and Ole Miss loss. Big matchup still, A&M and Texas. A couple big games, of course. This week is the last full weekend of the college regular season. They'll be their Tuesday night show this Tuesday. And then, of course, I assume next Sunday will be the brackets when they'll be announced there. First and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsor and partnerships, of course. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play. Download the app. It is free. I promise you, Travis, Zach, myself, Amber Hawley, Jay Berry will take great care of you moving forward. Viva Tequila Seltzer, the new flavor, Lemon. Head on over to where you buy adult beverages. Try lemon or try coconut. Now they are up to a full 6-pack of flavors. No excuses. Go try a Viva Tequila Seltzer. And of course, Atlanta Steaks and Seafood. Jump on over to Facebook. Introduce yourself to Terry Smith. While you're there, head on over to atlantasteaksandseafood.com. Place an order. Today, you could be grilling by the weekend. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Mr. Ron Marmalefsky.
Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon. Bright and early where you are, 9:07. Did you have your coffee this morning, Ron?
No coffee. Almost didn't make it. Was too busy celebrating with all the Nebraska fans this weekend. They finally became bowl eligible. And then an emergency call last night. 33 NFL teams calling me saying, can you fix our special teams play? Can you fix our special teams play? Because I think I could write a book on special teams the way it was mismanaged on Sunday. So just another weekend in the NFL, and here we are figuring out who's in and who's out.
Yeah, and again, Nebraska gets out to that 5-1 start. They easily could have been 6-0. Then the wheels started falling off, and I thought after the thumping to Indiana, their next week, they pushed all in at Ohio State. They had that chance there actually to upset Ohio State. Didn't. And then we start to look at the schedule. And I'll say this, Ron. I think it was the perfect storm for Nebraska, seeing Wisconsin the week prior pushed all in, played their hearts out against Oregon. Didn't have much for the Cornhuskers in Lincoln last Saturday.
Yeah, the stars really align with Wisconsin doing some things with their offensive coordinator, changing that out. When I was writing and I was looking at the matchup analysis, everything pointed to Nebraska. The one thing that didn't, coincidentally enough, was special teams. But then I kind of ended my sentence when I was writing up the game by saying, but what if it's not close? What if they don't have to worry about a close game? And that's kind of the mindset I had, is that Nebraska may not have to worry about a close game here because of the matchup indicators.
You know, everyone was in front of the TV at 12 o'clock last Saturday. We wanted to see what this Indiana team was all about. I've been talking about this Ohio State team since August, as well as you. I keep saying it this way, Ron. I don't see a Zeke Elliott. I don't see a Marvin Harrison. I don't see that flash that we've been accustomed to, that great quarterback play, the Justin Fields. The list is endless. I could keep going on. Yet, on both sides of the ball, they just take care of business. And I left that game saying, the books have been bullish. They're the favorite to win it all. And I think when the dust settles, they're going to be in that championship game.
You mentioned both sides of the ball. I'll say three sides of the ball, because this was Penn State times two. For years, Penn State, the way they lose to Ohio State is bad punt coverage. A punt return gets returned for a touchdown, a block kick, and so on. And the same thing happened to Indiana. The special teams play broke open that game in the second and third quarters with the punt return, with the botched snap on the punt. The punter missed it, and it was a 5-yard drive. And all of a sudden, it was all done. And then Ohio State defensively, again, kind of underrated defensively and under the radar. We talk a lot about Ohio State's quarterback play and what's going on with their great wide receivers. But they really shut down Indiana's offense. And so I came away kind of the same as you. Ohio State's been the team to beat for me for a while. But I also came away not too feeling good about Indiana. I know the score, 38-15, that late score, Indiana was in trouble, but then we saw what happened to the SEC. And Indiana, I still think if they take care of business, is a very deserving playoff top 12 team.
And it would be unfair and I think injustice to them to have a season where it's not 4 teams, because if it was, they'd be outside, they'd be out. Now there's 12 teams. This team has handled its schedule, and they've dominated their opponents. They came into a hostile Columbus. I thought, listen, they didn't lose like Army or Navy did to Notre Dame. They put up a good battle, and they're justified to be one of the final 12 teams, Ron.
Absolutely. And if the committee does their thing, and I know they like to manipulate things, so SEC, there aren't any rematches and stuff like that, but I would pay big money to see the state of Indiana be just so excited. Now, both teams have to take care of business. Notre Dame, USC is not necessarily an easy game, but imagine Indiana going to Notre Dame in the first round of the playoffs. What that would, that to me is just much. I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, I'm focusing on make that happen.
Before we jump into the carnage in the SEC, I thought my eyes were spot on with Kansas and Colorado. The one little fly in the ointment that I couldn't get my eyes past, though, was it wasn't on the campus of Kansas. It was at Arrowhead Stadium where the Chiefs play. But for the most part, Kansas boxed the wire. Kind of that team we expected in August and September, really rounding into form, Ron.
Yeah, Kansas was a little snake bitten. They had some late leads, and their defense isn't all there yet. They still have to recruit better defensively. And so they lost 2 or 3 games that they could have won early. And now we've seen what they can do when they're a little bit better on defense, and we know they fire on offense. Deion Sanders had a tellable quote after the game, and I kind of agree with him. They kind of were believing their press clippings a little, and the way he described it is they just didn't have the focus for a team that on paper was 4-6, but we know Kansas really isn't a 4-6 team. There's so many teams within a couple of power rating points of each other in that league. You can't take anybody for granted. And kudos for Kansas for putting up a very good game.
The team no one's talking about came out of nowhere. And I'm telling you, if I look back to September till November 26th, I'm telling you, the national media hasn't even talked about him. Where did this Arizona State team come from, Ron?
Well, they revamped the roster with about 55, 60 people in Dillingham's first year. They revamped it again with another 35, 40 people this past year. They were starting to play good defense early in his tenure last year, then injuries and a lot of new faces that fell apart. But this year, they're keeping it together. Obviously, rivalry games are really intense and you never know quite what's going to happen. I think they have to go to Arizona this week. But wow, what a turnaround. What a tremendous season for them. And everything's in front of them. Every year the Big 12 is going to look like this, where a team that finished 9th one year is going to possibly be in the title game the next. It's that close. And in Arizona State, and this guy's a young coach. They've got to be thrilled about what's going on there.
Let's go to the carnage. I had brought on Tyler Wyatt on our prior show this morning, and I said to him, who laid the bigger egg, Ole Miss or Alabama? And he talked about Alabama and 9 lives. He says they're not a cat, but we had put them for dead. And then Jalen Milroe comes back to life, Coach DeBoer. Their defense starts playing better, and now we're like, okay, this is the Alabama team we're used to. Oklahoma has more injuries than anyone in the country. Anyone. A coach that potentially is on the hot seat. Yet Alabama couldn't get out of their way. And Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss said, hold my beer, we can one-up you there. Jackson Dart, just those last 2 drives, I don't know what he was thinking. He put it all on his shoulders. Who laid the bigger egg, Ron, Alabama or Ole Miss?
Well, Alabama was a no-show. I mean, I think in some respects, I'm disappointed about Mississippi because I know they had wide receiver injuries. Trey Harris went out after his 43-yard touchdown catch, but they still should have done enough to win that game. So from a disappointing standpoint, more disappointed in Mississippi. From a not ready to play standpoint, Oklahoma's defense really frustrated Alabama. DeBoer came in with this tremendous offensive resume. In the SEC, sometimes it's not that easy to get it going. It takes a little creativity and ingenuity. I think Alabama will be fine in the long run, but that 24-3 loss, they're going to need believe it or not, Alabama or Mississippi could still back into the playoffs. We know these rivalry games can go in either direction. And I'm wrestling with if one of them goes in, which would you pick, Alabama or Mississippi, assuming that both win next week, let's say by 15 points?
It's funny because, we've, in our lanes, we know Lane Kiffin and the big stage. You can't take them. There's always a reason why they fumble, no pun intended there. And just looking at the resumes, Alabama has shown 2 flashes, but the one team I'm shocked here was this Ole Miss team. We talked about it last week. There were guys on our show grabbing the 10, 11-1 here. They were rounding into perfect form, take care of business. For me, if I had to choose between the two, I would take Ole Miss. That's me. But I think the Alabama, the following, the Jalen Milroe effect, and even Coach DeBoer, I bet you if they had to choose, they would choose Alabama.
Yeah, I'm in with you. I think I agree with you. That's why I think Mississippi will try to run it up against Mississippi State. And the Auburn-Alabama games are kind of strange. Auburn had that big lead against A&M. We talked about this at the end of last Thursday's show, which teams would play tight. A&M was one of the teams I thought would lose. And to their credit, they came back. but I thought A&M would play a little tight. I thought Penn State would play a little tight. That was a barn burner versus Minnesota. So you never know in Alabama-Auburn games, but Auburn, then again, they could disappear as well. It's going to be close. Obviously, the SEC is rooting for USC this weekend, rooting for Purdue, which is going to be hard against Indiana, and rooting for something chaos in the ACC, because as I look at it right now, all of a sudden the ACC is a two-bid league. If both SMU and Miami go in to the final game, if they play each other in the ACC title game and they're both 11-1, there's a place for both of them in the top 12. Even though I'm really Miami of Florida is a mystery in a way because they've had some lucky calls, but we'll see.
And that's the big question here, Ron. It is now you're going to penalize a team that loses in its conference championship game. In other words, there's only two teams that can battle for the conference championship. Whoever wins the conference championship game obviously gets awarded the one of the four spots here. So we're talking an SEC bias where Texas, we're assuming, obviously is in. Georgia, we're assuming, obviously is in. I'm assuming at this point the VOLS are in. So there's three right there. You got Ole Miss, you have Georgia, and we had Auburn first half 21-7. We stayed away after that. A&M loses in double overtime, yet they play Texas this weekend. So that what could have been the game of the year, Texas A&M wins that, and they're in there. So here's where my head is, Ron. Miami, Cam Ward, they've been the talk. They've been the talk all year. If SMU beats them in the title game, I find it hard for them not to put Miami in. And if you look at their resume, who have they beaten? They haven't beaten anyone. But if Miami beats SMU, I don't think they'll have a problem not putting SMU in with two losses.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Everything SMU has done, I mean, they've overachieved in a way. We knew coming in, it wasn't that tough an ACC schedule for SMU, but they still had to prove it in a brand new league. They switched quarterbacks after week 4. That's worked out. Their defense has played well. I heard a couple of interviews with their coach, long interviews with their coach about how he emphasizes winning the turnover battle. I don't think coaches speak about that enough. I think the SMU is playing well enough that they may not have to settle for second. They may be able to go. They have to take care of business. Obviously, there's some tough games. And when Cam Ward and Miami, when they're firing on all cylinders, Miami is a very tough team to beat. There's no question about it. But I give the coaching edge to SMU if they played in the title game.
I don't know if you've heard this, and again, the brackets aren't the brackets till they're officially posted, and here's the tournament. But there's a lot of, let's say, sharp eyes that say whoever gets that 5 seed is in. I guess the matchup, I think, would be with Boise State potentially, and then a home game. Have you heard that theory, Ron?
That they're in terms of going all the way, or
to get to the easiest track to the Final Four.
Oh,
in other words,
yeah,
is that 5, whoever's the 5 seed.
And I'd add the 6 seed too, because the 5 seed is gonna play the Big 12, so that's a good matchup. Is that right? Oh, I guess that's if they win that first game. Yeah. No, you're right. The 5 seed is the easiest because they would play presumably Boise, who has played a very, very soft schedule. When you compare it, of course, we don't know yet. Tulane has Memphis this week and Army the next week. I still have Tulane on neutral now, up to 2.5, 3 points better than Boise. So Tulane probably doesn't have a path to get in. Boise would have to. Boise's not going to lose this week. So, then it's Boise against presumably UNLV if UNLV beats Nevada. So I think Boise's in, and they gave Oregon quite a battle the first time. So let's say Ohio State beats Oregon in the rematch. Then Oregon plays Boise, and there's a confidence factor for Boise because that was 37-34 and one really great game.
Almost like that Washington Oregon replay of last
You're
year.
right.
So here we go. Transition to the NFL, not for long. Any given Sunday, we're gifted with 3 games on Thanksgiving Day. The Lions and the Bears. Then the tale of 2 backup quarterbacks. Tommy Chicken Cutlet DeVito against Cooper Rush as the Giants travel to Dallas. And then the nightcap is the one that you want to make sure you watch. Cold weather team Miami that's playing a lot better now, traveling to a Green Bay team who just stepped on. The 49ers are just a shell of themselves there, Ron. 49ers now travel to Buffalo. I think if Buffalo takes care of business, we might be able to pull the plug almost on the 49ers.
Yeah, on that division, that Arizona-Seattle game, really, it was toss-up all the way. There was a defensive touchdown in that particular game, so they played really close to the vest. The Rams, they kind of faltered against Philadelphia, so San Francisco is not completely out of it. But again, you can't just flick the switch and be ready to go. What Green Bay did to San Francisco is what Green Bay was hoping to do, avenge the last 4 or 5 games that they played against each other. I mean, Green Bay really relished in that. And you're right about the Green Bay-Miami matchup. It's a fascinating matchup. I haven't even looked yet what the weather report is like. I'm hoping it's decent weather so we could see really which of these ascending teams is the one to be reckoned with. I imagine that's going to be much watched TV. I'll probably overeat during the Giants and the Dallas game because I'm not sure what I would, what I'm going to learn from those 2 particular teams. I don't need to see 18 screenshots of Jerry Jones in the booth. So, and then the Bears, that first game, the Bears have watched the season slip away, and it's all about special teams. They had the punt. Remember, they had the field goal blocked in the Green Bay game. They had it all won. They got conservative. And then the very next field goal attempt in the game against Minnesota, it's blocked again. What are these teams doing in the off week?
Not watching tape, Ron. Not watching tape. So, you talked about the values of the elite running backs, Henry, Barkley, McCaffrey. I'm going to look at it in my eyes in my high-stakes fantasy football realm here. And Christian McCaffrey was the number 1 pick in most drafts. I stayed far, far away. You know my saying. If I didn't get invited to the wedding, I'm most likely not going to be there for the funeral. And he got hurt early, and he's just been a shell of himself. Now he's back in action. Henry, a lot of tread on those tires, but has had a fabulous year. It was the right spot and the right opportunity, and he's taken full advantage of it. And then Saquon Barkley, Giants said, "Nah, we're all set with you. We're going to keep Daniel Jones." Philly's like, "Come on down." And he's always been an unlucky running back. I've had him for a few years where, someone steps on his ankle. He's had some real mishaps and injuries. But OMG, what a performance he put on Sunday night, Ron.
Yeah. I was just thinking about it as I was watching these guys play, and I was saying, what do the good teams need to get over the hump? Because we know come draft day, running backs are devalued. They go in the second round. You can use a tandem running back. Denver's using 3 running backs. Miami has switched around some running backs. A lot of teams do that. Detroit, 2 very complementary running backs with different styles. They use them both. But look at the quarterbacks on the teams that Henry and Barkley and McCaffrey are playing with. So we know about Lamar Jackson in the regular season and Baltimore, and they're doing everything right. But the thing that they've lacked is they can't get over the hump in the postseason. Lamar Jackson is asked to do too much against the elite playoff teams that they have to face when the schedule gets tougher. So they get the closer in, Travis Henry. And what a difference this makes. I think this makes them maybe clean up some messes in the fourth quarter. the addition of that kind of running back to Lamar Jackson is invaluable. And then let's look about Jalen Hurts. Remember their great start last year coming off the Super Bowl, and then they wilted down the stretch. Was Jalen Hurts injured? Was there an injury, a hidden injury? What was going on with the team? So they get Barkley to take the pressure off Jalen Hurts, and look what's going on there. And a healthy McCaffrey does the same thing for Brock Purdy and diversifies an already diverse San Francisco offense with Ayuk, who's out now, obviously, with George Kittle, who's just absolutely amazing, and he's playing hurt, and then Deebo Samuel, who's asked to do a variety of things. So the value of the running back, when you have an elite running back, I've really come to realize how important that is for some of these elite teams to get over the hump.
And we watched last night, almost like, Chargers 7-0, and Lamar Jackson and company kind of playing with their food in the first quarter. 2 late scores in the second quarter, took advantage, get the lead 14-13 at halftime, didn't take their foot off the pedal, a big 51-yard touchdown by Justice Hill. This is a team that needed that win. The schedule sets up where, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure who they have this week. I do know they're on a bye week in 14. They travel to the Giants in 15. They host the Steelers week 16, week 17, Christmas Day at Houston. So the schedule sets up nice for this Baltimore team that doesn't have Ray Lewis. It doesn't have Ed Reed. The defense is the problem there. But did you see enough last night where you can breathe a sigh of relief thinking there's still going to be a tough outcome playoffs, Ron?
Oh, absolutely. I still have them winning that division. No offense to Pittsburgh, but they've got some really tough games. They haven't won in Philly since 1965. They've got to play Kansas City on Christmas Day. So Pittsburgh's schedule, and I figure a split against Cincinnati because those games are always tough, and Joe Burrow is playing at a high caliber. So I agree with you. Late bye weeks are bad for new coaches, but they're not bad for established teams that want their veterans to rest and reset. So I think Baltimore is going to be dangerous. They're probably just going to be the 3rd seed at this point with Houston faltering. So it means they will have to go into Buffalo, or maybe even into Kansas City. I don't know what we want to make of Kansas City right now. So they're going to play a couple of extra road games, but they're dangerous. There's no question. If they can just get a little bit better on the pass defense. We saw they had a lot of pass interference calls on that pass defense. We know Baltimore's a heavily penalized team going into the year. They just play a physical style anyway, but they've got to play a little bit better and a little less handsy on the back end of the defense.
I'm not going to take a victory lap here, but I wasn't drinking the Houston Kool-Aid in this regards. I thought C.J. Stroud and Coach D'Amico, an amazing year last year. And C.J. Stroud almost made it unfair for the rest of his class. He was effortless. He never panicked, and they had an amazing year. But I told everyone to pump the brakes now because you got a full year of tape. You find out his tendencies. You find out where he likes to maneuver, where his eyes are going. They brought in Stephon Diggs, who's now out for the year, which I didn't understand why. They brought in Joe Mixon, which, again, I didn't understand why, but when healthy, has been a big help to the offense. But we're seeing the hiccups with C.J. Stroud. We're seeing the turnovers we didn't see last year. And I'm going to make a comparison right now, Ron, where I'm going to say hats off to Bo Nix, hats off to Sean Payton, and just how beautifully he has molded Bo Nix. 19 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in the last month. But I'm going to make a comparison today on November 26th that this year's C.J. Stroud will be next year's Bo Nix.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, all those things you said are spot on because Houston had an easier schedule last year. This year, there's tape on Stroud. talked about that at the beginning of the year. That first place schedule, 0 primetime games to 4 primetime games this year. It's all different and moving parts. They had 4 or 5 new starters on defense to begin with. The only question was that their division handed them a couple of games. I mean, Indy should have at least split, if not gone 2-0. And this time, Tennessee was able to seal the deal with a new staff. I didn't even know if Houston would look out in that particular one. But yeah, I have a ticket under. I actually have 2 tickets on Houston, under 10.5 and under 10, that are definitely in doubt because it's not a tough schedule, but for all the reasons that you mentioned. And Denver's going through the 4th place schedule this year. And so next year they'll have a tougher schedule, 2nd or 3rd place schedule. So, and there's going to be tape on Knicks. So you've got it in advance. I mean, that's exactly right what you're talking about. The one thing I will say about Joe Mixon adding in, because Houston, basically Stroud was so amazing last year with no running attack. Joe Mixon does not fumble. He just doesn't fumble. And the addition of that kind of presence when you know you're going to win the turnover battle when your running back isn't going to fumble, I thought from that standpoint, Joe Mixon was a good addition.
Good morning, Mr. Russell Saylor. Happy Thanksgiving week. Russell wants to know, Stroud is feeling the pass rush. O-line needed in the offseason, ? Ron.
Yeah, that's true. The O-line was banged up to start the year. I think both offensive tackles were banged up, and I believe they're back. They're there, but it's not a complete offensive line. Houston, when D'Amico Ryans took over this team, they had a lot of issues, and you can't fix everything overnight. You can do it in college now with the portal, but the portal doesn't work that way in the NFL. You got to still manage the draft correctly, which they've done a better job, manage free agency, manage the salary cap. So you're right. There's still some things that need to be fixed, both defensively and offensively. I'd say definitely offensive line. And again, I don't know how many times I have to say this, but it really, if you look at the correlation between playoff teams and tight end play, it's a pretty medium positive to high positive correlation. I would like to see Houston get a viable upgrade at tight end as well.
You talked about Giants and Raiders will almost certainly be drafting quarterbacks, whether it's Sanders, Ward, and we know there's going to be a big push. The Jalen Milrose, the kid from LSU, Carson Beck. So again, the first 4 picks in the draft last year were quarterbacks. We haven't even seen J.J. McCarthy make one play yet. And then, of course, the shocker, Atlanta taking Penix Jr., and then Sean Payton say, hold my beer, we're taking Bo Nix here. I expect the same drama to happen next year's draft, and I can't wait for the offseason and all the percolating of, wow, this guy's great and this guy's great. But thoughts on Giants, Raiders, and the other teams probably most definitely drafting QBs?
Yeah, and it's an inexact science, obviously, to draft quarterbacks. What made last year's class unique is the immense number of starts these quarterbacks had. Penix had in the 50s. Nix had in the 50s. Who were a couple of the other guys had a lot of starts in terms of being ready and prepared for the NFL. It's going to drop off a little bit this year. Ward has a lot of starts, and I think it's really, I don't know, Deion Sanders wants to have his say in where his son goes. But the New York Giants and the Raiders, I'd say right now, it's got to be Cam Ward and Sanders as those 2 guys going to those 2 teams right now. In the 1 spot is Jacksonville. They're going to ride with Trevor Lawrence. I think the 4 spot, they're going to ride with their quarterback. Tennessee is auditioning Will Levis the rest of the year. We'll see what they're going to do. I don't know. It's going to be interesting watching Milroe against Auburn, a very good defensive team, and watching Alabama the rest of the postseason, whoever they play, whether they're in the playoffs or not, how Milroe does in those games, because I'm not sold on him. Beck of Georgia is going to play a lot of big games, and he could easily put himself into the top 3 quarterback conversation if he's not there already, maybe 1 or 2 others. But the Raiders and the Giants, it's obvious there.
Ron wants to know if we have Sanders as the top QB. And I will, Russell, tell you honestly, I am not poo-pooing anyone that drafts him as the first QB, but I have some doubts. Not that I'd be running to the window to get Cam Ward over him. It's a decision that I personally would not want, but I don't know your thoughts. Do you have Sanders as your number one quarterback, Ron?
Yeah, too early for me to make ratings on that. So I don't have an answer to that. I find it strange that I'm about to say that there's less volatility in what I see in Sanders than in Cam Ward, because I think Cam Ward, with his arm strength, with his ability, what he did at Washington State was really impressive. What he's doing rallying Miami from 21, 22-point deficits against Cal and then another game when they had to rally in the fourth quarter is very impressive. But there are some flaws that need to be corrected in Ward's game as well. So I don't have a one or a two that yet, and I don't even know if those guys will be 1-2 by the end of the whole combine season. But I do think both of them have high first round grades.
I'm going to throw something out at you. I have a good buddy of mine that was giving me a comp of Jalen Milroe. I don't personally agree with his comp. I'm going to give you a comp, and you could call me crazy on this. I'm going to use Jalen Milroe to Jalen Hurts. Is that a fair comp?
I haven't seen enough of Milroe's game to comment about it. Obviously, I mean, you would have said they come from the same system, but Alabama changed systems now with the new coach. So that I don't know. I think Milroe has that same ability to run, but not with the same number of carries. I mean, you look at Hurts; he's running between 9 and 11 times per game in the NFL. I don't think that'll be Milroe's game in the NFL. So what Milroe has to do is prove that he can win from the pocket. And I don't know that he has that skill set yet. I don't know that I've analyzed whether he has that skill set yet. So I don't know if I can make that comp yet.
And I'll close the quarterback conversation. I'm still holding tight, and I'm going to give you the name that I think ends up flying up the charts like J.J. McCarthy, and I'm going to stick with it. And he's had a bad last couple of weeks. I'm sticking with the kid from LSU and Nussmeier.
Yeah, he's kind of that old-fashioned quarterback that I see. He doesn't move around a lot in the pocket. He's in a quarterback-friendly system. LSU tends to put up a lot of points, although for some reason LSU has really deviated from getting that impact running back over the last couple of years to take the pressure off him. The one concern I have about him so far is that in crunch time, I haven't seen him pull out games. So I need to see that. This week, they play an interesting game, right? They play Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma, we don't know if they're going to be flat off that game against Alabama. Teams tend to be flat there, and LSU is at home. But it's a good defensive test regardless for Nussmeier to go against Oklahoma in this game. I need to see more about what he's capable of doing in the fourth quarter. I do think, Jeff, that he's a highly accurate quarterback, and he has NFL requisite accuracy. So that, to me, makes him draftable.
Underrated NFL teams, Green Bay, Tampa, and you talked about maybe Miami, and that's that Miami team no one's talking about. Bills got the East wrapped up. We're busy in the the AFC North with the Ravens, the Steelers, the Bengals, and of course in the West, the Chiefs just keep doing Chief stuff. Kind of a nonchalant 10-point lead. And Bryce Young, no one's talking about. The last handful of weeks has actually looked pretty damn good, Ron.
Yeah, he got a chance to recenter himself. The coaching staff got a chance to work with him, not force feeding. That's the thing about these rookie quarterbacks. They're not all Ken Stablers where you get to sit 2 or 3 years and then refine your craft. Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, for that matter, who I've told friends repeatedly that he would be out of football if he was asked to start the first 2 years of his career. Think Tommy Maddox, who was drafted after a couple of years in college, didn't spend enough time in college, force-fed by Denver right into the lineup, and he was out of football before you could say anything. Josh Rosen, the same way. So it could go either way. So you have to be careful about when you put these guys in. And just the reset for him was really good. I don't know about other people, but I see a difference between Green Bay and Minnesota, even though I think Brian Flores, boy, his schemes, once you learn them, they're really dangerous to go against a Brian Flores team. But I think this Green Bay team is overall more talented than Minnesota. And if they curtail if Jordan Love does not turn the ball over, I think there's a separation between Green Bay and Minnesota.
Last question. Why do bad teams keep on losing? I mean, I know the locals here. It's funny. We have one good week at Cincinnati week 1. We have 3 bad weeks. We show hope one week, and that's, of course, rookie quarterback. But the Patriots, their roster, top to bottom, other than Christian Gonzalez, it's just disgusting. Now, we're the favorite to add T. Higgins, so go spend the $30 million a year and get 4 games out of 10 with him. Good luck there. But the Patriots now, was Mayo the right? He looks lost right now. But why do these bad teams keep losing, Ron?
Well, the obvious answer that apparently isn't obvious to the NFL is special teams play. And the Bears could have 2 or 3 more wins if they did a little bit better on special teams. You saw Dallas-Washington was a comedy of errors. And I know Washington's just learning right now. This is a fantastic season, regardless of what happens to Washington, whether they just miss the playoffs or make the playoffs. But you just have to pay attention to special teams if you're going to win consistently in the league. Jacksonville, a combination of horrendous GM moves, and GMs matter in the NFL. You can see there's a correlation between drafting effectively and making the playoffs and not drafting effectively. So the 2 combinations that I see are poor staff management and bad special team play. And there were just numerous examples this past week, and really for the past 3 weeks, about bad kick coverage, about people not going down when they should go down, giving a team an extra down. That Bear-Minnesota game went both ways in terms of when you should go down and when you shouldn't. The Dallas-Washington game. You're going to look at some of these games on Thanksgiving and you're going to say, how could they let that happen? How can you kick to this guy? How can you make this kind of decision? Your backup quarterback, are you really going to demote, was the name Drew Lock, and go to Tommy DeVito off like 4 or 5 starts, and then think that you're going to turn the corner and have this enthusiastic outlook? I just see teams making repeatable mistakes, either by drafting, either by lack of attention to special teams, either by lack of attention to roster building, your backup cornerback, your backup quarterback. The same teams make the same mistakes all the time. And I think that's why bad teams continue to lose. Atlanta, they have 10 sacks in 11 games played. Again, this year, sacks are up. The average number of sacks per team is going to be around 42. Atlanta's on pace to have 16. Tampa's a better team than Atlanta, but they've had to play a first-place schedule, and they've been without Evans until last week, and obviously Godwin all season long. Baker Mayfield is playing amazing. Atlanta is not a better team than Tampa. And until Atlanta understands how to rush the passer, it's not going to change. So I think it's repeatable mistakes by organizations. And until that gets fixed, you're going to see the same teams drafting in the top 10 every year.
Well, again, it's feast week. It's Thanksgiving week. You got plenty of other opportunities and shows and podcasts to get to. So we can't obviously thank you enough here. But as we always end here, we like to give you that 7.5-yard button hook for Ron's closing thoughts.
Very simple closing thoughts this time. Everybody have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Just because these games are on TV and in front of your friends and family doesn't mean you have to wager on them. Patience as a gambler, as a handicapper. Just take it one game at a time. Take it in stride. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy this crazy last weekend of college football. Remember, rivalry games can be tricky. So be careful how you interpret power ratings, how you go about that. And come this time next week, and when we talk next Thursday, we'll be shaking our head as to what's going on with the championship games, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So everybody, happy Thanksgiving.
Shout out to Russell Saylor as always. Thank you so much for joining us. CJ Nicholas talked about Jaden Daniels and May are both legit. I agree there. It'll be interesting to see what we get with McCarthy next year, where Sam Darnold will be heading next year as well. And then he says the real story quarterback-wise is 2 quarterback sets is what the Steelers are doing. For me, there's a spot for Justin Fields, let's just say, fake handoff and run, and we've seen it in the past. Do I think they'll go full-blown? I doubt it, but we'll happen to see as we progress through the rest of this year and, of course, in the next year. So I want to thank everyone for watching. ECSI tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Brady Kannon will be here to recap what transpired in the PGA, talk some NFL, and we'll be bringing Paul Stone in at 11:35. He'll break down the college for the last full weekend there. Want to thank everyone for watching and listening. Go follow Ron at Ron A Sports. Go see some of his written work on Wager Talk as well. And for me at EC Sports Investors. Everyone, have a blessed day. Enjoy yourselves. Behave. Don't eat too much. And we'll see you soon.